This is Cyber Sam, and let's teach tech. I'm in a wonderful situation in the high school I teach where my students have opportunities to be a registered apprentice and a paid registered apprentice at one of the big businesses in the city. Because it's been a COVID year, everything's been out of order and so on. I've really stripped down my curriculum last year. In the past, I've done interviews, but we create resumes with students. We have a photography program, so I haven't done it yet, but maybe this year, I assume this year, we can take professional headshots of students. We have a career closet, so students can, for instance, throw on a sports jacket that's provided by the school and take a professional headshot, create a LinkedIn profile, and so on. So those are the things that we normally do, or the ideas I've had before COVID. And last year I wasn't really able to execute those because I was just sticking with the bare requirements. And last year was the year to just do that for my sanity and students' sanity. But that same business partner has already contacted me and they want to hire here in about a month or so. So the second year students I have are first in line for those jobs and apprenticeships. So I'm going to be starting the year and trying to be flexible and fluid and maybe push the regular curriculum aside or partially aside and do all those things we normally do in the spring a bit later here in the fall. So I end up helping students create resumes. I give them example resumes from previous students without their names on it, give them different templates and resources for filling out so it looks professional. I help them understand categories of a resume, including a professional objective at the top. We talk about certifications they've earned in the program and how they're important to be listed. We talk about speaking multiple languages and how that's important to list, the college courses they've taken, any previous work they've done. So we go through all that. I help proofread the resumes. I also get other teachers involved and can kind of outsource that. I'm sure your high school or higher ed has many resources for creating resumes. Take advantage of that. You don't have to do it all yourself. I tell my students that the word I often hear from industry is they're looking for employees who have passion. And I've asked those industry people, what does that look like? How do you show passion on a resume? And they say things like, we want employees who mess around with this stuff on their own. I tell my students participating in cyber competitions, getting those certifications, any coding projects they might have done on their own, any building of computers or setting up of networks at home or for someone else, all shows passion. I also tell them in their objective at the top on the resume to use the word passion. I'm a passionate cybersecurity student who's great at working in a team and so on and so forth. Those are the kinds of things that employees are looking for when they're hiring. Use the exact words they want. I take time to have students practice interviews. We practice eye contact, smile, and firm handshake. And we go back and forth in pairs. And I give them little strips of paper with about 5 questions each. And I've got about, 10 of those separate questions. But the first question is always, tell me a little bit about yourself. That's a common first interview question. So we always start with that. And to support that, we create an elevator speech. I've got a lesson where we practice pulling out the best qualities in ourselves and creating a paragraph or so, 30 seconds for students to say, I am awesome, you really want to hire me. I encourage them to use the word passion in that elevator speech. So I give them that scaffolding of practicing the first question so they're comfortable knowing the first thing they're going to say, and we We practice over and over, and I try to give them those standard interview-ish kind of questions. In a typical year, I also bring in business partners in the spring to do mock interviews or actual interviews. I try to choose businesses that are actually going to hire my students for a summer job, internship, apprenticeship, but I can also rely on business partners to just bring in maybe a human resources person. And I fill a space in our building with these business partners, spread out tables, put name tags of the business partner and what business they're from, and we do interviews in a speed dating kind of fashion. So I give the employers those same interview questions that I practice with my students, and I let them know that they can use these questions or their own questions. I do tell them to use the first question because we practice that, so students have a little bit of comfort in breaking the ice. And then we rotate after, I can't remember off the top of my head, it's been a while, but after about 15-20 minutes, we rotate. So like a speed dating, I give the employer a rubric to fill out, basic things like eye contact, confidence, and so on. Of course, I emphasize confidence with students when we're practicing. For some students, talking confidently about themselves doesn't come easy. It's not a part of their culture. It feels like they're bragging, but I really try to emphasize how important it is to say, you know what, I'm an awesome person. I've got all these great skills. You really should employ me. You need to hire me. That's the overall vibe we want to give. So after the employer has interviewed the student, they stand up, give that handshake again, stand by the next desk, and the employer fills out a little bit of that assessment. You can use that as a grade if you want, or just simple feedback for students. And then they politely wait till they're done writing. I try to cue everyone, okay, let's start again. They do the handshake, smile, eye contact, and start the process all over again with the amount of time you have. And the repetition is really, really key because they need practice. Higher ed students, high school students, they need practice. It's uncomfortable. But with some repetition, students can get more confident in their ability to meet someone new and talk about themselves. So I'm in a situation at the beginning of this year, which is awesome that they're going to be hiring for a registered apprenticeship. So I'm going to be going through these things here in the fall, in the first few weeks of school with my students to try to get them caught up on what they missed in the spring. I feel very, very fortunate to allow my students to do this. I explain to my students the difference between an internship and apprenticeship, how an apprenticeship is a long-term commitment. The employer wants to train you, let's say for 18 months or whatever the time commitment and educational requirements are, in a certain skill set. And its internship might be a summer thing and you're in and out doing a project. But an apprenticeship is a long-term commitment that ends up being a real great win-win for both the employer and the employee, and how students might need to think differently. They're going to get paid to work in high school. Along with the certifications in our program, they will get the completion certificate from the apprenticeship when they're done. And the goal is for them to be a regular employee for the business. So they complete the apprenticeship and then they get to continue to work for the employer. And we're very fortunate that this employer also provides continuing education funds. So they can continue after their apprenticeship. The employer can help with paying their higher education bills. It's really an awesome win-win. These apprentices have money in the bank where other students might have $100,000 of student loans. So we'll be taking advantage of this at the beginning of the school year. These simple steps I go through to set up students for interviews really pays off. After the interviews, these employers are really, really impressed. It's an awesome way for you to show off your program, polish your students up, get them hired, get businesses thinking differently about, hey, maybe I can start my own apprenticeship or internship, or you know what, I could find a position here or there to help out with our business. I get an immense amount of praise for my awesome students, and my students end up also going, wow, that was way better than I thought it was going to be. I generally ask for feedback from students because, you know, they're nervous and scared, just like I'm sure you are when you interview for jobs. And overall, they're like, wow, that was kind of fun. I actually like doing that interview. So it's well worth all the logistical efforts and contacting all these business partners. It's all worth it for students. And it's great for building up relationships with business partners. What kind of opportunities are you providing for your students? How do you train your students for getting real jobs and interviews and so on? Please share those in the comments. I'm Cyber Sam for Let's Teach Tech. We'll see you next time.